Good evening, all. We welcome you all to the International Webinar Series on Holistic Health, Well-being and Sustainable Development 2022-2023, commemorating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, nation celebrating 75 years of independence, India's G20 presidency, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals 2015 to 2030 as part of awareness and campaigns in collaboration with Sri Holistic Health Foundation India and Sri Research Institute Center for Art, Sciences and Wellbeing. Before we start our sessions, let's take the blessings of Almighty.
कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शत्रुबुद्धिविनाशाय दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः.
With the blessings of Almighty, we shall continue with today's sessions. Today, we are commemorating World Blood Donor Day. 14th June is World Blood Donor Day. Every year, countries around the world celebrate World Blood Donor Day, in short known as WBDD. The event serves to raise awareness of the need for safe blood and blood products and to thank voluntary unpaid blood donors for their life-saving gifts to blood. A blood service that gives patients access to safe blood and blood products in sufficient quantity is a key component of any effective health system. The global theme of the World Blood Donor Day changes each year in recognition of the selfless individuals who donate their blood for people unknown to them. This year, the theme is Give Blood, Give Plasma, Share Life and Share Often. The slogan for 2023 World Blood Donor Day campaign celebrated on 14 June 2023 is Give Blood, Give Plasma, Share Life and Share Often. It focuses on patients requiring the lifelong transfusion support and underlies the role every single person can play by giving valuable gift of blood or plasma. It also highlights the importance of giving blood or plasma regularly to create a safe and sustainable supply of blood and blood products that can be always available all over the world so that all patients in need can receive timely treatment. The objectives are to celebrate and thank individuals who donate blood and encourage more people to become new donors. Encourage people in good health to donate blood regularly as often as is safe and possible to transform the quality of life for transfusion-dependent patients and to help build secure supply in all countries in the world. Highlights the critical roles of voluntary non-remunerated regular blood and plasma donations in achieving universal access to safe blood products for all populations and mobilize support at national, regional, global levels among governments and development partners to invest in, strengthen, and sustain national blood programs. Officially designated as an annual event by the World Health Assembly in 2005. The day provides a special opportunity to celebrate and thank voluntary blood donors around the world for their gift of blood that has become a major focus for action towards achieving universal access to safe blood transfusion. Every single donation is a precious life-saving gift, and repeated donation is the key to building a safe and sustainable blood supply. In many countries, blood services faces the challenge of making sufficient blood available, while also ensuring its quality and safety. Lack access to safe blood and blood products, especially in low and middle income countries, impacts on all patients, including those requiring regular transfusion. One of WHO's strategies is to assist low and middle income countries in improving the availability and quality of human plasma, including optimizing the utilization of plasma recovered from whole blood donations and increasing patients' access to the life-saving plasma protein therapies. So this year's slogan focuses on patients requiring lifelong transfusion support and underlines the role of every single person can play by giving valuable gift of blood or plasma. It also highlights the importance of giving blood or plasma regularly to create a safe and sustainable supply of blood and blood products that can be always available all over the world so that all patients in need can receive timely treatment. The host country for the global event of World Blood Donor Day 2023 is Algeria through its National Blood Transfusion Service. Activities that would help promote the slogan of this year's World Blood Donor Day include donor appreciation ceremonies, social networking campaigns, special media broadcasts, social media posts featuring individual blood donors with the slogan, meetings and workshops, music, and artistic events to thank blood donors, and coloring the iconic monuments red or yellow. Countries are encouraged to disseminate to various media outlets stories of people, in particular transfusion-dependent patients, whose lives have been saved through blood or plasma donation as a way of motivating blood and plasma donation. A blood product is any therapeutic substance derived from human blood, including whole blood and other blood components for transfusion, and plasma-derived medicinal products. Medical therapeutic products derived from human donations of blood and plasma play a critical role in the healthcare. Safe, effective, and quality-assured blood products contribute to improving and saving millions of lives every year, as they address child mortality and maternal health, dramatically improve the life expectancy and the quality life of patients suffering from life-threatening inherited disorders such as hemophilia, thalassemia, and immune deficiency, and acquired conditions such as cancer and traumatic hemorrhage, and support complex medical and surgical procedures, including transplantation. An insufficient or unsafe blood supply for transfusion has a negative impact on the effectiveness of key health services and programs to provide appropriate patient care in numerous acute and chronic conditions. Ensuring access of all patients who require transfusion to safe, effective, and quality assured blood products is a key component of an effective health and vital for patient safety. Nearly 120 million units of blood are donated every year. However, this is not sufficient to meet the global need. Many patients requiring a transfusion do not have a timely access to safe blood. Blood cannot be stored indefinitely, meaning there is a constant need for donations. Regular donations are required to ensure there is always a supply for those in need. Despite global need, donation rates differ around the world, and some high income countries see up to 7 times more donations than low income countries. Blood transfusions are needed for a wide range of health conditions, including anemia, complications during pregnancy and childbirth, severe trauma due to accidents and surgical procedures. They are also regularly used for patients with conditions such as sickle cell disease and thalassemia, and for products to treat hemophilia. Maintaining safe and effective procedures around the collection, storage, and use of donated blood is essential. Collectively called hemovigilance, these procedures cover the entire blood transfusion chain that are used to standardize the use of blood in healthcare. Donated blood is used in many ways beyond whole blood transfusions. Processing can convert it into plasma, red cell concentrates, platelet concentrates, and many more, with each used for specific cases in healthcare delivery. In some cases, this allows a unit of donated blood to meet the needs of more than one patient and is an important aspect of the transfusion train. However, not all countries have facilities to process blood in this way. The only 50 of 173 reporting countries produce plasma-derived medicinal products domestically. The world supply comes through over 12,000 blood centers and is donated by 3 types of people: unpaid volunteers, family members of patients, and paid donors. World Health Organization advocates the development of national blood systems based on unpaid volunteers because that group tends to have fewer blood-borne infections. Despite this, many countries continue to receive less than half of the blood donations from unpaid volunteers, with which much of their blood supply dependent on family donations and paid donors. The unavailability of the timely, safe blood transfusions has led to many otherwise avoidable deaths. A consistent supply of blood is a cornerstone of any healthcare system, but this relies on regular donations and effective healthcare infrastructure. Huge gaps exist between low, middle, and high income countries regarding blood donation. Of the nearly 120 million units of blood donated each year around the world, 42% are in high income countries, where just 16% of the global population lives. However, more young people donate in low and middle income countries than in high income countries. Compounding insufficient collection rates is the inability of many healthcare systems to adequately screen donated blood for diseases such as HIV, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, and syphilis according to the quality system requirements. The liability to test blood can be due in part of the irregular supply of testing kits, particularly in low-income areas. Inadequate testing contributes to the spread of transfusion, transmissible infections, which can compromise the patient's well-being and further strain healthcare systems. Blood products contribute to the savings of millions of lives every year, improve dramatically life expectancy and quality of life patients suffering from life-threatening conditions, and support complex medical and surgical procedures. In high-income countries, blood products are mostly used to support advanced medical and surgical procedures, including treatments of cancer and hematological diseases, trauma resuscitation, cardiovascular surgery, and transplantation. In lower income countries where diagnosis and treatment options are limited, a greater portion of the blood is used to treat women with obstetric emergencies and children suffering from severe anemia, often resulting from malaria and malnutrition. In many countries, demand outstrips supply, and blood services throughout the world face the daunting challenge of making sufficient supplies of blood products available, while also ensuring the quality and safety of these products in the face of known and emerging threats to public health. The health-related sustainable development goals of reducing child mortality, improving maternal health, and combating HIV, AIDS, malaria, and other diseases cannot be achieved unless significant attention is paid to the availability, safety, and quality of blood products. The World Health Organization Action Framework to Advance Universal Access to Safe, Effective, and Quality Assured Blood Products 2020 to 2023 aims to provide strategic direction to global efforts to address present barriers to the safety and availability of blood products. Working with member states and partners, World Health Organization aims to achieve universal access to safe, effective, and quality assured blood products through the framework's 6 strategic objectives. The objectives focus on appropriately structured, well-coordinated, and sustainably resourced national blood systems, appropriate national frameworks of regulatory controls, national standards and quality assessment programs, functioning and efficiently managed blood services in all countries, effective implementation of patient blood management to optimize clinical practice of transfusion, effective surveillance, hemovigilance and pharmacovigilance supported by comprehensive and accurate data collection systems, partnerships, collaboration, and information exchange to achieve key priorities and jointly address challenges and emerging threats at global, regional, and national levels. Of the 118.5 billion or around 120 billion blood donations collected globally, 40% of these are collected in high-income countries and home to 16% of world's population, as already discussed. In low-income countries, up to 54% of the blood transfusions are given to the children under 5 years of age, whereas in high-income countries, the most frequently transfused patient group is over 60 years of age, accounting for up to 76% of all transfusions. Based on the samples of 1,000 people, the blood donation rate is 31.5 donations in high-income countries and 16.4 donations in upper middle-income countries, 6.6 donations in lower middle-income countries, and 5.0 donations in low-income countries. An increase of 10.7 million blood donations from voluntary, unpaid donors have been reported from 2008 to 2018. In total, 79 countries collect over 90% of their blood supply from voluntary, unpaid blood donors. However, 54 countries collect more than 50% of their blood supply from family, replacement, or paid donors. Only 56 of 171 reporting countries produce plasma-derived medicinal products, PDMP, through the fractionation of plasma collected in the reporting countries. A total of 91 countries reported that all PDMP are imported. 16 countries reported that no PDMP were used during the reporting period, and 8 countries did not respond to the question. The volume of plasma for fractionation per 1,000 population varied considerably between 45 reporting countries, ranging from 0.1 to 52.6 liters, with a median of 5.2 liters. Blood transfusion saves lives and improves health, but many patients requiring transfusion do not have timely access to safe blood. Providing safe and adequate blood should be an integral part of every country's national healthcare policy and infrastructure. World Health Organization recommends that all activities related to blood collection, testing, processing, storage, and distribution be coordinated at a national level through effective organization and integrated blood supply networks. The national blood system should be governed by national blood policy and legislative frameworks to promote uniform implementation of standards and consistency in quality and safety of blood and blood products. In 2018, 73% of the reporting countries of 125 out of 171 had a national blood policy. Overall, 66% of reporting countries, or 113 out of 171, have specific legislation covering the safety and quality of blood transfusion, including 79% of the high-income countries, 63% of the middle-income countries, 39% of low-income countries. About 118.54 billion donations are collected worldwide. About 13,300 blood centers in 169 countries report collecting a total of 106 million donations. Collections at blood centers vary according to the income group. The median annual donations per blood center is 1,300 in low-income groups countries, 4,400 in lower middle income countries, and 9,300 in upper middle 9,300 in upper middle income countries, as compared to 25,700 in high income countries. So there is a marked difference in the level of access to blood between low and high income countries. The whole blood donation rate is an indicator for the general availability of a blood in a country. The median blood donation rate in high income countries is 31.5 donations per 1,000 people. This comprises with 16.4 donations per 1,000 people in upper middle income countries, 6.6 donations per 1,000 people in lower middle income countries, and 5 donations per 1,000 people in low income countries. 60 countries report collecting fewer than 10 donations per 1,000 people. Of these, 34 countries are in World Health Organization's African region, 4 in World Health Organization region of Americas, 4 in World Health Organization Eastern Mediterranean region, 4 in WHO European region, 5 in WHO Southern Eastern region, Asia region, and 9 in WHO Western Pacific region. All are low or middle income countries. Data about the gender profile of blood donors show that globally 33% of the blood donations are given by women, although this ranges widely. In 15 out of 113 reporting countries, less than 10% of the donations are given by the female donors. The age profile of the blood donors shows that proportionately more young people donate blood in the low and middle income countries than in the high income countries. Demographic information of blood donors is important for formulating and monitoring recruitment strategies. As already mentioned, there are 3 types of blood donors: voluntary, unpaid blood donors, family or replacement blood donors, and paid blood donors. An adequate and reliable supply of this safe blood can be assured by a stable base of regular, voluntary, unpaid blood donors. These donors are also the safest group of donors, as the prevalence of blood-borne infections is lowest among this group. World Health Assembly Resolution WHA 63.12 urges all member states to develop national blood systems based on voluntary unpaid donations and to work towards the goal of self-sufficiency. Data reported to World Health Organization shows significant increases of voluntary unpaid blood donations in low and middle income countries. An increase of 10.7 million blood donations from voluntary unpaid donors from 2008 to 2016 has been reported by 119 countries. The highest increase of voluntary unpaid blood donations is in the Southeast Asia region, 127%, followed by the region of Americas, 81%, and Africa, 81%. The maximum increase in absolute numbers are reported in the Western Pacific region, 4.15 million donations, followed by the Southeast Asia, 3.05 million, and Africa, 1.53 million donations. 79 countries collect more than 90% of their blood supply from voluntary unpaid blood donations, 38 high-income countries, 33 middle-income countries, and 8 low-income countries. This includes 64 countries with 100% or more than 99% of their blood supply from voluntary unpaid blood donors. In 54 countries, more than 50% of the blood supply is still dependent on family, replacement, and paid blood donors. 8 high-income countries, 36 middle-income countries, and 10 low-income countries. Blood collected is an anticoagulant, can be stored and transfused to a patient in an unmodified state. This is known as whole blood transfusion. However, blood can be used more effectively if it is processed into components such as red cell concentrates, platelet concentrates, plasma, and seroprecipitate. In this way, it can meet needs of more than one patient. The capacity to provide patients with the different blood components they require is still limited in low-income countries. 38% of the blood collected in low-income countries is separated into components. 75% of lower middle-income countries, 96% in upper middle-income countries, and 96% in high-income countries. World Health Assembly resolution WHO 63.12 urges member states to establish, implement, and support nationally coordinated, efficiently managed, and sustainable blood and plasma programs according to the availability of resources with the aim of achieving self-sufficiency. It is the responsibility of the individual governments to ensure sufficient, equitable supply of plasma-derived medicinal products, namely immunoglobulins and coagulation factors, which are needed to prevent and treat a variety of serious conditions that occur worldwide. Only 56 of 171 reporting countries produce plasma-derived medicinal products, PDMP, through fractionation of plasma collected in the reporting country. A total of 91 countries reported that all PDMP are imported. 16 countries reported that no PDMP was used during the reporting period, and 88 countries did not respond to the question. So around 19 million liters of plasma from 45 reporting countries were fractionated for the production of PDMP during the year. This includes around 31% of plasma recovered from the whole blood donations. The volume of plasma for fractionation and processing for PDMPs per 1,000 population varied considerably between the reporting countries, ranging from 0.1 to 52.6 liters, with a median of 5.2 liters. Unnecessary transfusions and unsafe transfusion practices expose patients to the risk of serious adverse transfusion reactions and transfusion transmissible infections. Unnecessary transfusions also reduce the availability of blood products for patients who are in need. World Health Organization recommends the development of systems such as hospital transfusion committees and hemovigilance to monitor and improve safety of transfusion process in this regard. So 128 countries have national guidelines on the appropriate clinical use of blood. 32 countries in African region, 74% of the reporting countries in the region, 23 in the Americas, 70%, 12 in the Eastern Mediterranean, 67%, 33 in Europe, 80%, 9 in Southeast Asia, 90%, and 19 in Western Pacific, 76%. So transfusion committees are present in 48% of the hospitals promoting transfusions, 62% of hospitals in high-income countries, 35% in upper middle-income countries, 31 in lower middle-income countries, and 25% in low-income countries. Systems for reporting advanced transfusion events are present in 55% of the hospitals performing transfusions, 74% in hospitals in high-income countries, 35% in upper middle-income countries, 22% in lower middle-income countries, and 18% in low-income countries. 49% of reporting countries have a hemovigilance system. The European region has the highest percentage of countries with hemovigilance systems, 81%, and followed by the Western Pacific, 50%, and the Eastern Mediterranean, 50%, and Africa 40%, the Southeast Asia 40%, and the Americas 21%. So there are great variations between countries in terms of age distribution of transfused patients. For example, in high-income countries, the most frequently transfused patient group is over 60 years of age, which accounts for up to 76% of transfusions. In low-income countries, up to 54% of the transfusions are for children under the age of 5 years. In high-income countries, transfusion is mostly commonly used for supportive care in cardiovascular surgery, transplant surgery, massive trauma, and therapy for solid and hematological malignancies. In low and middle income countries, it is used more often to manage pregnancy-related complications and severe childhood anemia. The risk of transmission of serious infections, including HIV and hepatitis, through unsafe blood and chronic blood shortages brought global attention to the importance of blood safety and availability. With the goal of ensuring universal access to the safe blood and blood products, World Health Organization has been at the forefront to improve blood safety and availability and recommends the following integrated for blood safety and availability. Establishment of a national blood system with well-organized and coordinated blood transfusion services, effective evidence-based and ethical national blood policies, and legislation and regulation that can provide sufficient and timely supplies of safe blood and blood products to meet the transfusion needs of all patients. Collection of blood, plasma, and other blood components from low-risk, regular, voluntary, unpaid donors through the strengthening of donation systems and effective donor management, including care and counseling. Quality assured screening of all donated blood for transfusion transmission infections, including HIV, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, and syphilis. Confirmatory testing of the results of all donors screen reactive for infection markers. Blood grouping and compatibility testing and systems for processing blood into blood products, blood components for transfusion, and plasma-derived medical products as appropriate to meet healthcare needs. Rational use of blood and blood products to reduce unnecessary transfusions and minimize risks associated with transfusion. The use of alternatives to transfusion where possible and safe and good clinical transfusion practices, including patient blood management, stepwise implementation of effective quality systems, including quality management standards, good manufacturing practices, documentation, training of all staff, and quality assessment. So, World Health Organization supports countries in developing national blood systems to ensure timely access to safe and sufficient blood supplies of blood as well as blood products and good transfusion practices to meet patient needs. World Health Organization provides policy guidelines and technical assistance to countries for ensuring universal access to safe blood and blood products and work towards self-sufficiency in safe blood and blood products based on voluntary unpaid blood donation to achieve universal health coverage. So these facts are based on data obtained through the World Health Global Database on blood safety from 108 countries for the year 2008. And to give a complete overview of the global situation, data for the year 2017 has been used for 40 countries, and the data for the 2015 have been used for 23 countries. Where the current data are not available, overall responses received from 171 countries cover 97% of the world population. So the latest data is yet to be populated and collected. The critical role of the blood in providing nutrients to tissues and removing waste is dependent on a remarkable connected network of fluid-filled compartments, allowing for both passive and active diffusions. Including its presence in blood, water is a major contributor to body mass, accounting for nearly 60% of the adult body mass and upwards of 80% of the body mass of children. Proteins, fats, sugars, minerals account for the remaining body mass, with a large proportion of these being distributed and dissolved in body water. Body fluids exist in two main compartments: intracellular fluid compartment, in short known as ICF. This is the fluid within the cells themselves, which accounts for approximately 40% of the body weight. And the second component, main component, is extracellular fluid compartment, in short known as ECF, is composed of two spaces: intravascular space, which contains blood and plasma confined to circulating within the vascular system, accounting for approximately 8 to 10% of the body weight; interstitial space, non-blood and non-plasma fluid existing outside the vascular system, but within the organs, which surrounds and bathes cells of the organs, accounting for approximately 15% of the body weight. So the fluid in each of these compartments serves specific functions in maintaining health. The composition of these fluids, together with differences in the membranes that separate them, allow for the creation of forces that permit the essential movement of fluid constituents across membranes to meet the needs of the organs. These forces include diffusion. This refers to the movement of discrete substances across compartments through concentration gradients from high concentration to lower concentration. Filtration. Hydrostatic pressure causes fluid to be filtered through a membrane. Active transport. Mechanisms within the membrane exist to actively move a substance across the membrane. Osmosis. This is a passive movement of water into a compartment that has a high concentration of impermeable substances, but which is freely permeable to water. The concentrations of these impermeable substances on each side of the membrane determine the extent of water movement. Although the plasma and interstitial compartments are quite similar, their protein consistency is very different. And the ICF is significantly different from both components of the ECF. The major protein in the ECF is albumin. It exists mainly in the vascular space and is thus known as plasma protein. Albumin and its other ECF proteins are relatively large, making cellular membranes impermeable to them. The ICF also contains high concentrations of a wider variety of proteins that are present in the plasma and for the most part too large to pass through the membrane. So oncoptic pressure or colloid osmotic pressure is a form of osmotic pressure induced by the proteins, notably albumin, in a blood vessel plasma, that is blood or liquid. It displaces water molecules, thus creating a relative water molecule deficit, with water molecules moving back into the circulatory system within the lower pressure venous end of the capillaries. It has the opposing effect of both hydrostatic blood pressure, pushing water and small molecules out of the blood into the interstitial spaces with the arterial end of capillaries, and the interstitial colloidal osmotic pressure. These interacting factors determine the partition, balancing of the total body extracellular water between the blood plasma and the larger extracellular water volume outside the bloodstream. So net flow out of capillary into tissues is 10 mm. Net flow into capillary is also 10 mm. While the blood flow through the capillary wall, the larger hydrostatic pressure is 35 mm, smaller osmotic pressure is 25 mm, smaller hydrostatic pressure is 15 mm, larger osmotic pressure is 25 mm. So the ICF is also subject to water volume regulation, which again is mainly dependent on osmotic forces. However, unlike the ECF, which is largely protein dependent, the ICF is mostly dependent on differences in the concentrations of sodium and potassium, which are actively controlled by pumps situated in the cell membrane. Blood should be considered as an organ system, though it is not typically viewed as such. Like other organ systems such as central nervous system, gastrointestinal systems, blood is made up of complex but integrated variety of cell types and has a distinct biochemistry. This allows it to provide critical nutrients to and remove waste from all organ systems, as well as to provide life-saving functions such as fighting infection and coagulation. Also, similar to other organ systems, it may malfunction for many reasons and can be subject to injury and failure. Blood is composed of a number of cellular and acellular components, including red cells, white cells, platelets, and plasma proteins. Because it is in constant contact with the vascular lining and the role it plays in coagulation, the endothelium should also be considered a critical component of the blood. So let's look at each part of the or component of the blood. Red blood cells, called as erythrocytes, account for the majority of cellular population of circulating blood and for approximately 40 to 45% of total circulating blood volume. The major function of red blood cells is to take up oxygen from the lungs and carry it to tissues throughout the body. Produced in the bone marrow under the hormonal influence of erythropoietin, red blood cells have an approximate lifespan of 120 days after entering the circulatory system from the bone marrow. After this time, red blood cells are disposed of by the liver and spleen's reticular endothelial system. Red blood cells achieve through their major function of uploading and offloading oxygen by making use of iron-based molecules, hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a protein that has two pairs of peptide chains, each containing an iron ring. For adult hemoglobin, one pair of these peptides is alpha chain and other is a beta chain. Each of these four chains of subunits is capable of reversibly binding with one molecule of oxygen, giving a total of 4 molecules of oxygen for one molecule of hemoglobin. Measured in grams per deciliter, the typical amounts of hemoglobin in an adult male and female are approximately greater than 13 grams per deciliter and 12 grams per deciliter respectively for male and female. So let's look at the white blood cells. White blood cells or leukocytes are also produced by the bone marrow as well as the lymphatic tissue and make up less than 1% of the total circulating blood volume. However, they play a critical role of combating infection, identifying, destroying, and removing invading of foreign material from the body. They also help to develop immunity and resistance in response to natural exposure to infection or from purposeful immunization. These functions are carried out by a heterogeneous population of white blood cells. The types and percentage contribution to the white blood cell family are as neutrophils 55 to 73%, lymphocytes 20 to 40%, eosinophils 1 to 4%, monocytes 2 to 8%, basophils 0.5 to 1%. White blood cells are usually measured and reported in numbers per microliter or cubic millimeter. Coming to platelets, produced as small fragments from megakaryocytes in the bone marrow, the major function of the platelets is to respond to damage to a to the vascular wall, especially damage that could result in hemorrhage. Platelets adhere to the damaged vascular wall and release a number of mediators and enzymes that participate in the coagulation process. Platelets are a major component of resulting clot and are incorporated with fibrin, where they are capable of contracting as a mechanism to strengthen the clot. Platelets are measured as number of microliter of blood. And an important but overlooked aspect of the blood is the role of endothelium and microcirculation, which are critical to ensure delivery of nutrients such as oxygen to tissues as well as coagulation. The microcirculation with its endothelial lining is estimated to cover an area of up to 7,000 meters square. The individual microcirculatory unit is composed of arteriole, capillary bed, and post-capillary venule. Its role is to ensure that the delivery of oxygen and other nutrients to tissues in excess of their needs, as well as to remove products of metabolism, with an estimated 10 endothelial cells in an adult, and endothelium is constantly exposed to blood. Thus, manipulation of the blood will inevitably affect the vascular system in some way. Injury to the endothelium can result in undesirable complications through three major mechanisms, particularly permeability, dysfunctional hemostasis, and inflammation. Coagulation is a complex but orchestrated process used by the body both to maintain vital blood flow within the vascular system to tissues and to prevent and reduce hemorrhage when the vascular system is injured. This process, which involves integrated cellular and non-cellular components, is termed as hemostasis. Imbalances in the system are major causes of number of primary bleeding and clotting disorders, as well as the bleeding and clotting complications caused by a number of illness and injuries. Coagulation and hemostasis can be divided into three major processes: primary hemostasis, secondary hemostasis, and finally fibrinolysis. So let's look at primary hemostasis. When injured and bleeding, the damaged endothelium of the blood vessels is the first to be involved in the process of hemostasis. This process includes a vasoconstriction of the damaged vessels to reduce blood flow and the exposure of specific proteins and structures such as collagen, microfibrils, and basement membranes that provide adhesion of the platelets to the site. Platelet adhesion prompts the release of number of mediators that promote further vasoconstriction and aggregation of additional circulating platelets at the site, resulting in a primary platelet plug, which will grow to consist of trapped red cells. Secondary hemostasis, occurring in the concert with primary hemostasis, the activation of an important acellular network and pathway of specific plasma proteins combined with phospholipids and calcium ions participate in clot formation. Known as coagulation cascade, it consists of two pathways, intrinsic and extrinsic. The intrinsic or contact activation pathway is triggered through the activation of several clotting proteins coming in contact with the exposed collagen in the damaged vascular wall. The extrinsic or tissue factor pathway is activated by the release of tissue factor from the damaged vascular wall. Activation of both pathways results in cascade of enzymatic reactions leading to final common pathway activating the protein thrombin. This causes the conversion of the soluble protein fibrinogen into insoluble fibrin, which is then incorporated into the platelet plug, strengthening it so that it becomes a fibrin clot. So fibrinolysis or clot removal occurs through several mechanisms. Although production of a fibrin clot is essential to produce hemostasis, it is also critical to have limitations to the growth of the clot to prevent progressive thrombosis beyond the site of injury. So the several mechanisms include blood flowing past the clot to remove additional activated clotting factors, activation of proteins designed to inactive clotting factors, and active degradation of the clot over time by specific enzymes such as plasmin. Although it is normally a very balanced process, major insults such as severe trauma with hemorrhage or severe inflammation, such as sepsis, can lead to drastic alterations, resulting in extreme responses such as fibrinolysis or thrombosis. As the coagulation process, in the initialization phase, vascular damage exposed subendothelium. In the primary hemostasis, platelet adhesion, platelet aggregation, platelet plug formation, and in the secondary hemostasis, flubrine stabilization. And over the period of time, the coagulation through intrinsic pathway and extrinsic pathway prothrombin is formed into thrombin and fibrinogen is formed into fibrin clot, and with fibrinolysis activators, plasminogen is formed into plasmin, which is broken down to fibrin degradation products. Thus, the entire cycle of coagulation takes place. That helps in the blood clotting so that whenever there is an injury, the blood does not keep flowing out of the body. So basic oxygen transport for tissues to receive oxygen, several fundamental processes must take place, like oxygen is transferred from lungs into the plasma, and oxygen is bound to hemoglobin in red blood cells, and oxygen is transported to microcirculation where it is released to tissues for utilization. Air contains mainly a mixture of oxygen, nitrogen, and small proportion of additional gases such as carbon dioxide. Each of these gases contribute to the total atmospheric pressure in proportion to their concentration. At sea level, it is 760 mmHg or 101 kPa. Air contains approximately 21% oxygen, 160 mmHg or 21 kPa, with rest being mainly nitrogen, close to 79%. Although the partial pressure of oxygen seems high, the level is reduced by the time air reaches the lung alveoli, where diffusion of oxygen into plasma occurs. Air humidification in the upper airways, transfer of air to alveoli, and diffusion of blood carbon dioxide from the blood plasma into the lung alveoli reduce the partial pressure of oxygen from 160 mmHg to 100 mmHg, which is 13.3 kPa. Although this is a significant drop, this partial pressure is still higher than the partial pressure of oxygen in the pulmonary capillary venous blood returning to the lung from the body, which is a resting state, averages only 40 mmHg, that is 5.3 kPa. This represents the main driving force, resulting in a rapid diffusion transfer into blood plasma from a higher pressure gradient to a lower pressure gradient. In the absence of any alveolar barriers such as infection, edema, or other causes of damage, almost total equilibrium is achieved between the partial pressure of alveolar oxygen and the arterial capillary blood leaving the alveoli. The main carrier of oxygen in the blood is the hemoglobin molecule present in the red blood cells. As oxygen diffuses from the alveoli to the plasma, it rapidly crosses into the red cell, binding to the hemoglobin until almost fully saturated, around 98 mmHg or 13 kPa. When fully saturated, each gram of hemoglobin can carry 1.36 ml of oxygen. Thus, blood would carry nearly 20 ml of oxygen in an individual with a hemoglobin level of 15 grams per deciliter. If the hemoglobin is fully saturated with oxygen, however, plasma is a very poor oxygen carrier. Only 0.3 ml of oxygen is dissolved in each 100 ml of plasma when breathing 21% oxygen. Of course, this may be too technical for non-life sciences participants. But these are important to understand blood and blood-related diseases, disorders, and the benefits of blood, components of blood, and various aspects. Anemia also develops as a result of one or more, like increased red blood cell loss, decreased or inadequate production of normal red blood cells, increased destruction of red blood cells. Anemia becomes clinically important when it contributes to the reduction in oxygen supply, making it inadequate for the patient needs. So the treatment of anemia include various principles like treating the underlying cause of anemia, establish the clinical consequence of anemia, patient reserves, decompensation, optimize all the components of oxygen delivery system to improve the oxygen supply to the tissues. Blood transfusion should only be considered in patients with symptomatic anemia. So when an individual becomes anemic, a variety of physiological changes takes place. Central to these changes are the body's own compensatory responses to anemia that within limits helps preserve the oxygen supply to the tissues. The main purpose of this module is to explore These compensatory mechanisms that, when reinforced by appropriate treatment of anemia, may be sufficient to make blood transfusion unnecessary. So anemia is defined as a hemoglobin concentration in blood that is below the expected value, considering age, sex, pregnancy, and ethnicity. This definition therefore requires a comparison to be made between the individual's hemoglobin concentration and the expected value. To determine the patient's expected hemoglobin concentration, it is necessary to refer to one of the hemoglobin ranges, the normal hemoglobin range or a reference hemoglobin range. The normal hemoglobin range is 95% distribution of hemoglobin concentrations found in representative large group of fit and healthy individuals. Generally, it varies from age, based on age and sex. Of course, there are various other topics that can be discussed, but it will take a lot of time, and also for you it will be no bouncers if it is too technical. So finally, we'll go with the testing, and then we shall conclude this commemoration. So testing for infectious agents and pathogen reduction, blood donors may carry infectious agents in their blood, sometimes over prolonged periods and without necessarily demonstrating any clinical symptoms or signs of disease. Virtually, all infectious agents that are present in the blood can be transmitted by transfusion. However, due to their clinical and epidemiological relevance, only a few infectious agents are routinely screened for in donated blood before transfusion. So screening for transfusion transmissible infections include blood should be collected only from donors who have selected in accordance with established screening criteria. Every unit of donated blood must be screened at least for the following infections like HIV-1, HIV-2, anti-HIV-1, anti-HIV-2 antibody, hepatitis B surface antigen, hepatitis C, HCV antibodies, Treponema pallidum antibodies, that is syphilis, and wherever possible, these tests should also include screening for Chagas disease for donors living in countries where the seroprevalence is significant, malaria, where donors are exposed to risks of infection. Screening for other infectious agents should comply with national policies that should reflect the prevalence of the infection in the potential blood donor population. No blood or blood product should be released for transfusion until these and other nationally required tests are shown to be non-reactive. So let's look at various other aspects of these agents. Coming to HIV, human immunodeficiency virus. After exposure and infection, viremia may not be detectable for a few days. Thereafter, high titers of virus, RNA, or antigen are detectable for several weeks. Subjects then may remain infectious for life. The window period The period between infection and detectable evidence of virus by donation screening, whether viral nucleic acid, antigen, or antibody, is often called the window period. Blood donated in this period is infectious. With early HIV antibody test, antibodies against HIV-1 and HIV-2 become detectable only approximately 21 days after exposure to infection. Viral RNA and HIV-1 viral protein designated P24 antigen are detectable 7 days earlier than antibodies. Current generation serological tests combine the detection of antibodies and HIV-1 P24 antigen and therefore have the potential to further reduce the window period, at least for HIV-1. Where resources are available, a molecular test, NAT, in short, for the direct detection of HIV-1 RNA or DNA, is included in the screening test panel to further reduce the risk of transmission of this virus, mainly during the window period. RNA testing shortens the window period during which the disease is present but not detectable. There are wide variations in the prevalence of HIV infection between and within countries and even within localized areas. Global estimates of HIV positive individuals are of little help in assessing the risks of transmission by blood transfusion in local community. So prevention initially relies on the selection of low-risk voluntary non-remunerated blood donors and the exclusion of unsuitable donors. Screening tests for HIV are required to enable infected donated blood to be identified and discarded. Confidentiality and further management of seropositive blood donors through referral for counseling and treatment are essential. Prevention of bacterial contamination and bacterial testing of platelets, pre-donation health screening, validated skin disinfection, and collection methods, together with strict adherence to the sterility procedures during blood component handling, are essential to reduce the contamination of blood products. Diversion of the first few milliliters of blood to a sampling pouch is further measured to reduce the introduction of contaminants potentially present in the donor's skin. Platelet concentrates, however, still have the highest risk of bacterial proliferation because they are stored at 20 to 24 degrees, which allows replication of a wide variety of microorganisms. For this reason, prompt detection of bacterial contamination may improve biological safety of this component. Different methods of rapid bacterial growth detection on samples of platelet concentrates are in use in some contexts to identify and to exclude contaminated platelet units. These include culturing platelet samples for 18 to 24 hours before they are transfused and rapid solid phase tests that detect gram-positive and negative bacteria cell wall constituents. So with this, we shall conclude the commemoration of World Blood Donor Day. Though we can talk for hours together, but due to paucity of time, we'll move on. Today is also commemorated as Raja Sankranti. This Rajaprabha or Rajaprabha is an Indian festival that celebrates womanhood. The first day is called Peli Raja. The second day is called Mithuna Sankrantri, and the third day is Budaha or Basraja. So to commemorate the final day of celebration, women bath Bhumi, an ancient goddess symbolized during the ceremony of a grinding stone with turmeric paste and flowers and sindu. The woman celebrating also makes offers to all types of seasonable fruits to Mother Bhumi. The day preceding with the first day of Raja Sankrantri is called the woman celebrating also makes offers of all types of seasonal fruits to Mother Bhumi. The day preceding the first day of Raja Sankrantri is also called as Sajabaja or preparatory day, during which the entire environment, including the house, kitchen, and grinding stones, are cleaned and spices are grounded for 3 days. During these celebrations, women take a break from work and wear new sari and ornaments. Parva, also known as Mithuna Sankrantri, is one of the most popular festivals in the state of Odisha. It is dedicated to Bhuma Devi, the consort of Lord Vishnu, and is a series of ceremonies celebrating women. The state of Odisha, which is India's eastern coastal state and it's renowned for its rich cultural and heritage, the people of Odisha engage in widely known customary rituals and rites, but two of best known of these are Rathayatra, which also takes place in June, and Raja Parva. Raja Parva is a 3-day long festival dedicated to Bhuma Devi, the Indian goddesses who've been described as Odia version of Mother Earth. The main aim of the festival is to honor Mother Bhuma as well as the womanhood at large. The story behind the Raja festival is the goddess of earth, Bhuma Devi, around whom, with the festival of concentrated, is said to undergo her menstrual cycle during the period of June. The word Raja is the Odia word for the menstruation, derived from Rajaswala, which is interpreted to mean a menstruating woman. Raja Prabha is a festival that celebrates the peculiarity of menstruation as an aspect of womanhood. Menstruation is considered a sign of fertility, and so Raja celebrates femininity and the ability of women to give birth to another life. During the Raja Prabha, Odia people lay off construction works or other activities which involve digging up the earth. It is believed that by doing this, they pay homage and respect to Mother Earth. Today is also commemorated as International Bath Day. It is the easiest way to relax and a great way to enjoy your own company. And this day is less about enjoying a long bath, but more about rewarding yourself with simple pleasures of self-love by doing something that just for yourself. So with this, we shall conclude today's commemorations. And we thank each and every one of you for joining us on today. And let's all donate blood. It saves many lives. So we request everyone to quickly fill up the feedback form. Those who have not registered for the today's webinar are requested to register. The registration form link has been already shared in the chat box. We are sharing it again for your reference. Feedback form has been raised in the form of Zoom polls. We request everyone to quickly attend to the poll before leaving the platform. Thank you once again, everyone, for joining us. See you all tomorrow. Take care. Good night. We request everyone to quickly fill up the feedback form before you leave the platform.